Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the latest installment of the Center for Global Business Global Impact Speaker Series. And we are delighted this evening to have a very special speaker. I'm Deirdre Mendez. I'm the director of the Center for Global Business, and our speaker this evening is Alejandro Grisi, who is CEO of Grupo Grisi. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, Grupo Grisi is a leading Mexican company with over 160 years in the pharmaceutical, personal care, and cosmetic industries. Alejandro is a fifth-generation member of the founding family. He's served as CEO since 2013, and I'm proud to say he is a UT MBA. Alejandro is credited with doing some very important things for Grupo Grisi. He's given credit for strategic acquisitions, innovation, and a focus on institutional governance to ensure that the company will continue to thrive in global markets. And Alejandro, when we talked before, you said you would take it from here with the introduction of your company and yourself, and I will let you do that. Thank you so much for joining us, and welcome.
Thank you very much, Deirdre, and hello, everyone. Well, yes, to give you a context of our company, as Deirdre mentioned, it's a 162-year-old company. It's not common that a company maintaining the same family. And basically, we are in the health and beauty care and some pharmaceutical products. We manage our own brands. We create, manufacture, and develop our own brands. But also we have other businesses, and one of that is we distribute some other brands in an exclusive way in Mexico. And we do the marketing also of that brands. We work for 14 years with Procter & Gamble. We have business with Unilever, with Coty, Reckitt Benckiser, and some other big companies, and it's part of our business. But today we're going to talk a little bit about an international business with our own brands that are very well-known brands in Mexico and in some other countries.
Thank you. So Alejandro, as you mentioned, Grupo Grisi is a family-owned business that grew from modest beginnings at some point in its distant past, in its 162-year-old past. What changes did you need to make as you entered foreign markets? I'd like to begin sort of there, talking about the advent of your international expansion, and how did you set yourselves up to achieve success internationally?
Thank you. Yes, we can say that we started exporting our products around 40 years ago, but the real internationalization of our company, maybe I can say it started like 25 years ago. And obviously we did a lot of things. I will tell you some of the things we did, not necessarily in order, but one of the first things we did is we had to start by shifting the company's mindset from being a local business to becoming an international organization. That's very important in every company that wants to be international, that the company believe that we are an international company. Another thing we did, I remember, we adapt our accounting system, because when we started selling our products in the US, I remember that the products was very expensive if we compare with the Mexican market, with very high public prices, because at the beginning in our cost system we were adding some of the local costs in Mexico. So we need, in that occasion, we changed our accounting system to really just impact the international markets with the real cost that it have. We need to put out the sales cost of the Mexican structure as an example, the freight, etc. And once we did that, we can realize that we can have more competitive prices in the different markets, and with their own cost. And basically the operational cost of each market, it's in the markets. Another thing we did, we create an international business department that dedicate and to understood logistics, learn foreign trade regulation, study different consumer behaviors. And while this department works closely with our central marketing team, it translates cultural difference and market nuances. Over time, this led us to adapt our product labels to different markets and eventually to develop specialized products for specific countries. We hire professionals with experience in international markets. That was very important for us. Within this department, we also created a structure of key accounts. This was very important because if you can have key accounts specialized in international markets that are not in the sales force of your local market, it gives them a different visibility. And these guys were focused on identify local distributors, define which products had the greatest opportunity in the markets, negotiate distribution agreements, and most importantly, develop country-specific commercial plans together with other partners. On the other hand, we also learned and understood that it's very, very important. If you have a brand, it could be a service, but it could be a product. It was very important you invest in promotion and advertising. But most important at all is that you need to control the advertising strategy in the different countries. Basically, the best one can control this advertising strategy is the owner of the brand, because he's the one that knows very well the brand, that knows very well the advertising, the strategy, the characteristics of your brand, and the different strategies that in your local market have been successful. Many companies make the mistake of allowing distributors to manage and fund these investments independently. In my opinion, this is not a good strategy. Sometimes you can have an agreement with the distributor that they will put some money in the advertising budget, but the strategy at the end should be that is the control by the owner of the brand, in this case Grisi, independently that they can give you some interesting information about media, local media, about opportunities, prices, etc. But finally, the final decision should be by the owner of the brand, the manufacturer. The other thing, it's in our experience, we had a very great opportunity because we distribute products for other companies in Mexico. We have the opportunity to learn the mentality of these large companies like Procter & Gamble or Unilever, and how those companies manage local distributors. So that expertise for us was very important, because we learned a lot of these different methodologies, how they measure us as their exclusive distributor in Mexico, how they communicate with us, how they share their strategic plans, and how you can apport and support these local plans. But most important of all, we also understood how a distributor thinks. And it's very important today, because those countries that we have local distributors and exclusive distributors, we know the way they think because we did that job. And that helped us a lot to take a really win-win relation in order to achieve the objectives we are looking in each market. Very important also, another thing, it's we learn that it's very important to invest in research, market research. We allocate the market research for each market. I can tell you that the first year we didn't do that, but then we understood that the best way you know the local market, the different market, your results and you could be achieve it in the best form. Let me give you an example. When we launched our baby care line in Spain, I remember like 6 years ago, we hired PricewaterhouseCoopers to validate our concepts, fragrances, artwork, positioning, etc. No, many of you can think, oh, well, in Spain they speak Spanish, so in Mexico. But what you find in this research is that there are very big difference between cultures, and sometimes the same words that you think everybody understand in each country that speaks Spanish, they understand this in a different way, and they do not like some concepts that maybe in our local market, we like it a lot. So we changed some strategic things in our lines. The results of that research was very well positioned. But basically, at the end, with those little changes we did, we had a very successful launch in Spain. We did a very successful advertising communication, and today, the Ricitos de Oro line in Spain, in Carrefour, is the second largest selling line in the baby care segment. Another example that it was interesting also in Houston, in Texas, we did an interesting research about the Hispanics of the second generation Hispanics in the U.S. market. We conducted a very insightful study. So we learned, as an example, that there are some people of the second generation that do not prefer to speak Spanish in public in order to avoid being identified as Hispanics. And they did not shop in the Hispanics product aisles. However, some of them, they recognize very well our brands because their mothers used it when they were children. And when they asked them, why do you not buy our products in our Ricitos de Oro line in the US? Normally they told us, no, because I don't find the product in the stores. And when we ask them, where do you buy? And they tell us the stores are the same stores where that our products were selling. So we understood that these consumers do not want to go to the Hispanic category because they don't want to be recognized as Hispanics. So we defined very interesting strategy. We invest in different shelves. We invest in putting our products in the non-Hispanic area, and actually we put our products nearby the nationwide products, and the result was a very successful increment in sales. And today we did that in all the U.S. No, and also I have another examples. By the way, in Spain we discovered 20 years ago that aloe vera. It was identified as an emerging and fashionable ingredient with very limited competition. The Spanish consumer at that time do not know a lot about aloe vera, and they identified aloe vera as a product that it's born and as a plant that it's born in the U.S., in the south of the U.S. and the North Mexico. So we defined a really interesting strategy saying that our aloe vera came from Mexico. We did a different product than the products we manage and we distribute in the U.S. and other countries, with a more high-end offering. We focus on the parapharmacy, and we create a different line. Thanks to our market research, they help us to take better decisions and to avoid cost in the long term. Also, finally, in our case, we think and we learn that you need to take long-term strategic decisions because the international business is a long-term business. So let me give you two examples. One of the examples is we do long-term commitments and contracts and agreements with the best distributors because we need to assure our distribution in those countries that are strategic for us. In the case of in the U.S. market, we were working with a company in Texas called Midway that they don't just distribute our products; they distribute a lot of Mexican and Hispanic products. So the way we do our strategy with them, we start buying shares of the company, trying to be part of the company, Today, we own 51% of the company. The company continues distributing a lot of products, not just the Grisi products, but we maintain the strategic position to assure that this company will take care of our products because we are part of the company. The company, it's managed by the US people that found that company, but Grisi is a strategic partner. The same we did with Spain, where we finally bought our little distributor, but it helped us to learn a lot about the European market. And when we bought Maja, a European brand, we had the opportunity to import our products for the Europe through our Spain company, and also to learn a lot about the regulations in the European market that are very different from other regulations. Basically, I think that are the samples that I can give it to you.
Well, that's a wonderful list and really speaks to your investment in your global strategy, because I think many larger companies have had disappointing results as a result of failing to do that. So I love those specific examples. So maybe you've already answered this, but I'm just curious, if you had known from the beginning of your international expansion, if you had known what you know now, what might you have done differently, if anything?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's a difficult question, because if you bring the time, the past time to here it's difficult. But well, one of the things that I think I should do different. Sometimes I should take some decisions more quickly, and maybe less fear to the failure. It's interesting to have failures, and you learn a lot of the failures. And basically, these failures help you to improve your future decision-making process. So that's one thing that I should do better if I return the time. Also, it's very important to choose the right country and the right distributor, to look for the values, objectives, and the size of the distributor, because you need to think that the local distributor should be like a marriage for the next 20, 30 years. So if you have a failure in that, sometimes when a company starts to export their products, they choose the first distributor they want your products, and they start selling some products that maybe is not the time to sell that product. So I will take more care of that process, because if you tell me what is a key thing to have success in the international business, is to have the right partners locally with the same values that your company has. As I already told, I already mentioned, do not try to save cost with the market research. We did save cost. We not always hire Pricewaterhouse or these big companies. We did that 5 years ago once we are in the international business. But the first things what we do, it's sometimes you think you need to save cost. If you save cost at the beginning with at least little research, you will have a higher cost in the short term. So choose your SKUs, choose the right products, but before taking a good decision, the important decision, have the right information of the country, basically. Also, maybe I should be a little bit more aggressive in terms of buying some brands. 14 years ago, we bought a brand, a Spanish brand, this brand is called Maja. Maja, it's a Spanish company, but it was a very well-known brand in 24 countries. So we bought that brand, and it helped us a lot to grow our international business rapidly, because there were like 10 countries that our products were not in, and also there were countries that this brand was not in, and the Grisi products was there. We had the opportunity to compare distributors in different countries, to consolidate distribution, to understand more, to have more volume, maybe to think in manufacture a product in a different country than Mexico. Why I mentioned this? Because we had the opportunity to do that 10 years before when we acquired Maja. And we didn't give the importance of those brands that sell much more in other countries than in Mexico. So we focus on brands that their sale was in Mexico. When we bought that brand, that 60% of its sales was in countries abroad Mexico and 40 in Mexico, we discovered that we had a great benefit in terms of growing our international business. And we discovered a lot of new distributors in the US, maybe these regional distributors that they already buy our products, but we didn't meet them directly that reached to the Cubans, Dominicans, and Puerto Ricans, etc. No? So that's a thing maybe I should do better if the time. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Let's see. We're going to be taking questions from the chat before long, so feel free to begin posting your questions. But let me see. What advice would you give to a domestic company that wants to develop a global strategy? And can you give any examples maybe from a company that has already, other than your own, that has done this sort of thing successfully, and describe, or not successfully, and describe some pitfalls to avoid or best practices, that sort of thing?
Okay. Well, think globally. Change your organization mindset and develop an international strategic planning process. That's very important. Once again, invest in research. You need to understand customs, cultures. It sounds simple, but you need to travel to the different markets. Not you, not me. Maybe me, I do it, but the international team, the marketing team. If you do not travel to the stores to see the products, the competition, if you don't have the information, who are the clients, what are the better stores or the better companies, who's the competitors, who's the distributors, that are very, very relevant information before taking your decisions. Also, you need to research about the margin structure, the margin structures in the supply channel. Every country have different processes. Some countries use brokers, some countries do not use brokers, use just distributors. Some countries you sell directly to the retail. So you need to understand that margins. And once you understand that, you can see if your products can compete in a different market. And once you see that, you can see if your product's a good product with good characteristics and good benefits to a different market, maybe you need to produce that product in that country, because it's very difficult to just export a product, and because your prices will be very high to compete. International business, it's a long-term business. You need to seed, then you will harvest, you need to invest. And finally, you need to understand when you have a brand or a new service that nobody knows your brand. When you start from zero. So I can tell you Ricitos de Oro or Manzanilla or Jabones Grisi, and we will say, well, that means nothing to me. And you need to start supporting your brands in different ways. There are a lot of different ways to do it. To start having sell out in stores and to start having some share. And then finally, if you have share, you can have more products, and finally, you can have some profit. But it could take 3 to 4 to 5 to 10 years. It's a long term. You need to define your objectives really clear, achievable, but challenging. You need to look what your product is offering to the market. Always look for something novelty, for something new in that new market. It could be the package, it could be the formulation, it could be the advertising, it could be the ingredient, or I don't know. if you think that you could have a competitive advantage just because you're having a low price, I do not recommend that. The price strategy is a short-term strategy. If you find the right characteristic, the right benefit of your product, and your product is supporting something new to the category, then you will have a sustainable strategy and a long-term strategy, basically. Finally, well, you need to hire I recommend you to, if you have the opportunity, to hire people with international experience. Local people, it's very, very important. They could accelerate your path and shorten the learning curve. You need to define your business model. Before you enter a country, define what will be the business model you're looking for.
Okay, you have provided us with so much useful information. Honestly, I know our students are fascinated by this discussion that's spanning strategy to marketing to accounting to so many different topics. Let's shift, if you don't mind, to your own approach to leadership as CEO of a globally expanding model, and how do you manage teams and operations across so many different cultures and markets?
Yeah, well, first, you need to have an open mind. And you should always observe best practices across different countries and remain open to changing your processes and structures to improve it. It could be in your local market, or in this case, Mexico, that we have our headquarters and maybe our larger market. Sometimes you find better ways to doing things in different countries, and you need to be really, really open to do that. Also, it's very important to standardize the way you do business and the relationship that you have with your subsidiaries or with your distributors in the different countries. You need to talk the same business language, establish objectives. At the same time, it's very important to respect their culture, their traditions, etc. Among in business, you could have best business model, but local cultural and traditions things, no? Basically, you need to look. The one part of it very important for the leadership is to always look at win-win situation in the supply chain. As already mentioned, if somebody in the supply chain is not earning money, somebody happen in the medium term. So you need always to look that everybody should earn a good margin, a competitive margin, so they can invest and they can be motivated to grow their business in the future. And very important at all, you need to tell your organization, specifically in this case in Mexico, your headquarters, your manufacturing plants, your local people, that they are working for a lot of countries. So every decision they took for the products, maybe they are affecting other countries, other products, or local products. So in the meantime, when they understand that culture, they will do the work with more quality. They will understand different regulations. They will understand different point of views. And they will have the perspective to change things that normally they do it differently. And very important also, you need to make that all the people that are selling your products in all the countries need to be proud to be part of Grisi, that they need to be proud to represent your brand and find the motivation, sense of pride that feel toward it will be fundamental to the success of the business. Employees in different countries need to be part of the organization, not just a distributor. And that's very important. It's a great motivation.
Super. Thank you for that. And you mentioned regulations, understanding regulations. And I would like to maybe move towards some of the challenges right now that you might be facing. And I would imagine that regulatory changes that are happening so quickly now in the global marketplace would be on that list. Can you talk maybe about some of the challenges that is creating for your company and how you're managing all of that?
Yes. Well, regulations in terms of our industry are very, very important because ingredients, materials, sustainability, it's something that you will hear more and more and more in the future. One of the things we did is we strengthened our regulatory area by incorporating professionals with international regulatory expertise. We invest in software to verify that our formulas complied with the health regulation, and in each country, and most importantly, it keeps us updated on the constant ingredient restriction in both Europe and the United States. Because finally, what we see is that there are certain changes that happen in Europe, then 1-2 years later it goes to the US, and later it goes to the world. So we need to adapt our formulations in a global way. Today, our research and development departments adapts for these formulas in the different markets. And the mindset is, once we're going to launch a product, we need to think if we're going to launch it for all the world. In the past, we launched first a product for Mexico, then we export to some countries, and then if those countries have a different ingredient or regulation, then we change the formulation for those countries and then for Mexico. No, today, our research and development department work if we're going to launch a global product with that potential in mind. There are certain countries like the US that there's not just a national regulation. There's regulations in California different from the US, or in New York. There are ingredients that you cannot use it in California, and it's impossible that you have a product for the US that have a formula for California and a formula for the other 50 states or 49 states. It's impossible. So you need to work always with those regulations that are more strange. Basically, and sometimes we have failures and we have to do some recalls, and it's very expensive to do a recall when sometimes happen and you have an ingredient that in 2 months will be prohibited in some countries and you have inventory there. The way we are doing that is we are trying to work with 2 years in advance the regulations start to change or adapt our formulas to the different countries. And maybe the most interesting thing is, like 3 years ago, we defined in our strategic planning process to do a sustainability plan, a long-term sustainability plan, trying to become a 100% sustainable company. It's difficult to be a sustainable company, but we have very interesting objective for the next 10 years. We commit to the United Nations Sustainability Guidelines and establish cross-functional team to develop this plan. And you need constantly to change your methodologies, processes, etc., politics in order to reach this. There are some clients that audit us, like Walmart, like Costco, like Disney, because we have some licenses for Disney characters, and also FDA, COFEPRIS, And this is very important for us because we use these audits to comply with the most stringent regulatory standards. And these audits not only include the manufacturing plants, they also include labor things, energy things, conservation of water, raw materials, plastics, etc. No, CO2 emissions. So we use these audits to comply with everything. If we don't have something good, we do a planning to comply this at least in the next 6 to 1 year, because those audits sometimes are in a yearly basis, basically.
All right. Well, thank you for all of that.
And well, finally, the last point, it's very important. Once you are an international company, it's very important to strengthen your legal department. The legal department is very important because once you have business in 25 countries, there are different legal things. Sometimes you have lawsuits from customers, from clients, etc. And this legal department need to work with some other legal agencies in the United States, Europe, etc. That's important because you are working with a lot of countries. Sorry.
Well, that was helpful for covering all the rest of the waterfront. This is it's a deep conversation, deep information that you're bringing us, but also very broad and diverse. So I want to thank you for that. And we have a lot of questions now in our chat. And if you don't mind, I'll just start asking you some questions from our audience.
Very good. Perfect.
All right. So here's one. You were talking about the importance of making mistakes and learning from them. And here is a question about that. Have you ever regretted a business move, and how did you grow from it?
Well, yes. We have very, very big failures in working with some distributors. And yes, because some of them at the end gave us a lot of trouble in the market. We had a problem with a Costa Rican distributor. There are some laws that protect distributors that country that it's very difficult to stop a contract, and they can charge you a lot of money depending on the years they work for you. And so that kind of bad decisions cost us a lot of money, but a lot of time, because we need to stop our business in Costa Rica for some products for 5 years. So finally, well, what we did is we need to pay. We need to pay our costs if we continue to be interested in having business like in this country. No? Basically, we have a lot of failures, and you need to affront that failures, and you need to understand that part of the game. Or sometimes you can invest in the bad line of products for the country, and invest a lot of money, and not all the products have the success that we expect. And finally, you do not support the right product; you support the wrong line of products, etc. Basically.
All right, thank you. And here's another question. I want to be sure I understand, but I know a lot of students will have this question as I'm formulating it. It seems to me this person is asking, what was a challenge or something you learned for even before you began when you were a student? So what did you learn as a student, or what was a challenge you faced that you learned a lot from?
When I was a student?
Well, can you think back to when to what you learned from your MBA coursework, or yeah?
Well, yeah. When I went to UT, it was 33 years ago. And obviously, I worked for 2 years for Grisi, and it was a very, very difficult, different company, a very, very localized and much smaller, much more company. Well, in my experience in UT, I understood that there's a world, a big world outside Mexico, and there's a different way of thinking of the international community. I, when I understood that we need to change the way we are doing things in Mexico, not in Mexico, in Grisi, because we do the things in a traditional, in a traditional way. And I understood that technology, it's a very interesting part of the game. So when I returned to Mexico to work in Grisi, I saw the big difference of use technology in the business, no? And one of the things I understood is we need to invest in systems such as SAP or such as I don't know. It was starting the email at that time. My first email was in Texas, in UT. But the challenge that I really understood is if you want to be an international company, you need to open your mind to different things. And to not maybe change everything, maybe you need to understand what you are doing good because you are a company that has been success, but what you need to do better or different if you want to affront new markets or new experiences, basically.
All right. Got it. Thank you. So we have a couple of questions about culture. I'm going to try to kind of combine them. When you enter a foreign market, how deeply does local culture shape the way you run the business from day to day? And how do you balance maintaining your company culture, your cultural identity as a company, with the cultures of the global markets you enter? I think that's a really interesting question.
Yeah, once you enter a new country, you normally think that the way have you been doing the things in your local market that normally are successful should function in the new country. And what the first surprises that we understood is that not necessarily the successful strategies that you do in Mexico should function in the country. So, as I already mentioned, you need to hear, to understand, and to be open. Obviously, there's a mix because your success strategies can mix with their different cultures and with different ways of doing things. You do not need to impose the way you do things. You need to hear local distributors and understand why they approach things differently than us. Sometimes you laugh. You say, well, this is not the way you, or maybe you're not doing, if you go to a country in Central America that maybe do not have the same technologies that in Mexico, you say, well, there are better things to do. But normally, you need to think that the consumer there understood differently to the consumers in Mexico. Maybe we understood things different to the consumers in the US. So it's very important to respect these new objectives, points of views, to discuss this with the distributors and to get to a medium point. Because your expertise is interesting and their expertise it's very interesting in the way we do business. But in Mexico, when you return to your company, you need to review if what you're doing is the right way of doing things. Because you learn sometimes you return from a country and you say, well, these guys are doing really interesting that we never thought we can do it. Let's see if we can apply them. And you need to talk with the people and say, well, there are interesting ways of doing businesses, processes, methodologies, etc. And I repeat, you need to be really open, but at the end, your local culture, it's like the main culture of the way you're doing business, because you have 162 years with values, with cultures, with creating products and etc. No? So it's not imposing your culture to other countries, but you have your base is what you are, and you need to enrich this culture with different cultures to do a better or to do a stronger culture in the company.
Got it. Thank you. Another question is, how do you choose, or do you even choose the next location for potential expansion?
We have a list. And we have a list, and we do a planning session where we said, okay, today we are around 25, 26 countries, and maybe a little bit more with just exporting our products. And we define where we invest our money to increase our businesses in some markets that we have the opportunity. And obviously, if we have the opportunity to enter new markets. So where we see that we have a huge opportunity of growth, like the United States, that could be our largest market in the future, we focus all of the resources. When we see a country that our products have, when we go to a new country and we see that the characteristic of this market, it's similar to other markets that we are in, and they are consuming products similar to the products we do, we decide to focus on rich information in order to enter that market. Obviously, we take in account the cost of registering the products, how close is the market in terms of distributors, in terms of competitors. Is there very, very big players in our segments, or not necessarily? There are much more players, and the fragment of the market, it's big, so we can have a space there. And best of all, we decide based if our products adapt something or give something new to the marketplace. As an example, we have a dog line. We do shampoos for dogs and for soaps and some other sprays and things for pets. What we saw in some countries, and we enter with that, is that their category of pets, especially in Central America and South America, are not well developed. And when we go to stores there and we see that their products are maybe not as good, or in quality, in presentations, in prices, etc., we see that we have an opportunity there. Maybe we go with our pet products to France, we say, well, it's impossible to enter here, or to England, or to the US, because the category is well developed. It's 20 years behind other countries. No? So if we see those opportunities, and then we check that there's an opportunity of having a distributor and cultural things, and obviously the cost to enter the market, we decide that that's the country. But we are not choosing, we choose one country or two, much more every year. We are doing some tests in China, very difficult, not because of the culture, because we saw that they love Spanish products and we have a line, and we are doing things with Alibaba, but there are some, it's like doing a research, because it's a very, very big market. But finally, answering the question is, the characteristic of the market, the characteristics of our products, and that is that two things take us to lead the decision.
All right, thank you. So sort of a related but different question, what specific criteria or thresholds must a target meet for you to seriously consider an acquisition? So not so acquiring another brand.
Yeah,
or
okay.
another company.
Very interesting question. we already acquired 5 big brands, one to Henkel, the other brand to GlaxoSmithKline Beecham, When we see that those big companies are selling some brands, because there are global companies that sometimes decide to focus in worldwide brands, and they sell brands, maybe regional brands. We see 2 things: that the brand have a big awareness, so the brand is well known, at least in 2, 3, 4 countries, or at least in Mexico. Second, that the brand has the opportunity of growing if we invest in the brand, because there are huge brands that those companies do not invest in the last 5 years, nothing, neither advertising, promotion, or new products, etc. No? So with this, we see these 2 characteristics. And finally, the third one is that it's a brand that could be entering our portfolio. One, that participate in the categories we know, or in parallel categories that we think we can enter. Then we decide that it's a brand that we could take care more than the normal order. We acquired PERT+. PERT+ was a line from Procter. Procter sell it to Henkel, and then Henkel sell it to us. Because it was not a priority product for Henkel. It sells a lot in some markets, but they have a high cost. And also, if we see that we can do some good things with the cost in terms of the rentability, so we decide and we participate in the acquisition, no? Or in the contest to acquire the brand, because sometimes we are not the only ones that want the brand. There are 2, 3, 4 companies. We establish a price. We said, well, we do a financial analysis, very, very specific analysis, and we do some scenarios. What we will do with our same structure. We will avoid some cost, some fixed cost. What we will see the opportunity of downsizing the cost without downsizing the quality. And finally, we say, with this new rentability, we can invest in this brand. I don't know, saying something, 10% of the sales in the brand. And we know that those companies do not. So we do that. The formula function very well for us, because those brands that are well established, but they are well not growing, with some attention, investment, they start growing. So basically what we decide. No? And in this case that I told you that of Maja was a very, very old brand. We discovered that Maja was in 24 countries. We didn't know. And we saw that Maja sells shower gels, sells soaps. It's our categories. And we saw that Maja was a 100-year-old brand. We are a 160. When we bought the Maja, we were a 150-year-old company. So we said, well, it's a type of brand we know to manage. What is the challenge here? We need to modernize this brand, to invest in this brand, to put new products in the brand, around the brand, to have better costs, etc., etc. And that's what happened. No?
Thank you for that very detailed and complete answer. Lots of information to unpack in that response. We are just about out of time, and so we have a couple several actually questions about a decision you wish you had made faster. Do you have a quick example of a question, of a decision that you wish you had made sooner or faster?
For the future.
Well, you mentioned that you sometimes wish you had made decisions more quickly, and I think people are interested in knowing an example.
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe one thing that I wish I made was acquire Midway, 100% of Midway. It's an example, to manage that company as a part as a complete part of Grisi, no? We do it by parts. We know that, I know it's very well, it was very expensive, but at the end, we cannot grow more than 51% because there are other investors, etc. And that gives us a lot of advantages, but not as a arm or a hand of Grisi. And maybe what we are doing today in the US is something I wish I made before. We are launching products for the US market, not just for Hispanics. Maybe we have fear because we thought it was, and it's a very big market, very difficult to enter. But the ones we starting launch the part of Ricitos de Oro for the African American market, and we have been very successful these 2 years. It's in a different niche, and once we put some of our lines in the national shelves, and we see that these products it's functioning. I wish made that 5 years before. It will be a different story. But well, that's business.
Super, thank you. That is fascinating. And just with the one remaining minute that we have, if you don't mind, we always have questions from students about skills they can acquire to prepare themselves to work for global companies. So for students interested in international business, what experiences do you think are most valuable early on if they hope to work for a global company in the future? Do you have a relatively quick answer for that?
Yeah. Well, you need to understand. It's a skill is to learn a lot about different countries, about global companies, to learn a lot about how these global companies did their strategies once you are a student, and to travel. Not just travel gives you the culture, and when you travel, you need to observe, to see how people moves, to see different markets. And if you like in a specific category, specific market, try to see if you like beauty or if you like technology, try to see and to read a lot about how in those companies, in the different markets are doing things. Once you enter a company, you will have a more open mind, because sometimes we focus a lot in our local news, and you need to go abroad. And you need to feel local in every country. That's what I think. If you're a student, obviously, read a lot of different stories, success story and failure stories of the different companies that trying to be international. There's a lot of articles about that. But if you want to be a global manager, you need to at least travel. If you have the opportunity to study something in a different country, I'm not telling an MBA, maybe a short thing, 2 months, 3 months. It will open your mind of how things are different everywhere.
Well, thank you so very much. This was fascinating to me, and I know our audience greatly appreciates it. Alejandro Grisi, CEO of Grupo Grisi, thank you very much for joining us, and I wish you all a good evening.
Thank you, Idri. Thank you, everybody. I hope it helped a little bit. Thank you.